Okay, well, we started this once, and I was going to try it again here. Praise Yahuwah. We just thank you, Father, Yahuwah, that you have given us all things for life and righteousness, Yahuwah, that the elect are not deceived, because they are warriors in the family of heads. Praise you, Yahuwah, for being our strength, our weapon that we are intimate with, and our song, Yahuwah. This bright sound of music, Yahuwah. Every note, every L to the Tav, as it works in harmony, striking the chord of our heart unto the Master. Hallelujah. Hooah. I would encourage you to watch part 1, because you won't get as much out of part 2 if you don't watch part 1. So praise Yah. Let's go where we left off. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, get the picture? Oh, maybe I should put it up there so we can get the picture. Get the picture? What we're talking about here happens with all kinds of sound. It happens with frequency. It happens with the magnetism. It happens in place, time, season. We're happen to be talking about mostly music here. The Adversary knows it. It happens all around us. We find it in music being the first unified field. Everything has its own prime resonance, and it works in time and season and place. We are to resonate with the Creator, Yahuwah. Is Yahuwah the tree? No. Is the tree Yahuwah? No. But it's got a piece of Yahuwah. It's got an ayin and a zadi. And it's got to do with the picture of what the tree does here on the earth, at least as we can see in this sinful fallen state. Psalm 55. Give ear to my prayer, O Eloah, and do not hide yourself from my plea. Give heed to me and answer me. I wander and moan in my complaint, because of the noise or the voice of the enemy. Psalm 55. I wasn't going to go fast, but now, here's again, just like the voice of Yahuwah, the enemy has a voice. It runs on a cycle, like the sun on the horizon, every day, every season, over time, over years, over cycles. So does the voice of the shepherd, like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It says about the sun. Is he the sun? Do we worship the sun? Of course we don't worship the creation. We worship the Creator. Beautiful picture. The enemy's got a voice. He's on the horizon every day and every night, trying to secure us to his instructions, trying to pull us in, trying to goad us around, trying to, let me do it again, correct us, encourage us. Oh, he'll encourage us, not in the word, but he will encourage us with a sweet, nice voice. The noise of the enemy comes from the word Ab, our Father. And what is this noise of the enemy? This is the word here. Ab comes from Ab. Aub. Why? Because he's the father of something. He's the father of lies. Hear his voice. Hope you recognize it immediately. You feel a vibration of it in your body? Remember when the professor played the romantic music? He didn't say anything with that. You could feel it. Yes, there are words which we need to understand in order to understand. But there are also vibrations that take place that can move us in directions that the adversary would like us to go. Or there's that unknowing knowing, ma'ah, that comes from the Hebrew, which is that gut feeling that we know is from the Ruach HaKodesh. Because of the noise of the enemy, because of the outcry of the wrong, for they bring down wickedness upon me, and in wrath they hate me. And we know that happens outside the camp, right? But does it happen inside the house? My heart is pained within me, and the frights of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling have come upon me, and shuddering covers me. And I said, who would give me wings like a dove? I would fly away and be at rest. See, I would wander far off. I would lodge in the wilderness. Selah. I would hasten my escape from the raging wind and the storm, which the taught ones wanted to do when they were in the boat. Yahushua was asleep, and there was the wind and the storm of the enemy trying to blow them over and fill the boat with water. Old Dumpty up there on the hill at one point. It's going to be the perfect storm. Where do you think they get this stuff? Where did the adversary get this verbiage? He takes the truth and he twists it. Or some of it's even, and there's no truth in him, but some of it's even true because it is about him, because it's the lie that he's a liar. Confuse, O Yahuwah, divide their tongues, for I saw violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around on its walls. And that's what Humpty Dumpty did. Wickedness and trouble are also in the midst of it. Covetings are in its midst. Oppression and deceit do not vanish from its streets. It is not an enemy who reproaches me. Okay, so does the enemy do that? That's outside the house? Yes. Yes, he does. That I could bear. And that's not an easy thing to bear either. Nor one who hates me is making himself great against me. Then I could hide from him. We can hide in Yahuwah. But it was you, a man my equal, my companion and my friend. We took sweet counsel together. We walked to the house of Eloah in the throng. There's tares amongst the wheat. There are wolves in sheep's clothing, wearing the proud crown of Leviathan. Let death come upon them. Let them go down to Sheol alive. For evil is in their dwellings, in their midst. I call upon Eloah, and Yahuwah saves me. On the cycle, evening and morning and noon, dawn and dusk and noon, I complain and moan. He hears my voice. He has redeemed my life in peace from the battle against me. For there were many against me. El, even he who sits from old, does hear and afflict them. Selah. Those with whom there are no changes, those who do not fear Eloah, he has put forth his hand against those who were at peace with him. He has broken his covenant. His mouth was smoother than curds, and their mouth is smoother than curds. Inside that are supposedly walking with us, and outside. Yet in his heart, he is fighting. Fighting who? Yahuwah. Don't want to see it, don't want to hear it. His words are softer than oil. He's not coming to you with a pitchfork and two horny horns. He's right here among us, as well as outside of us. How about it, Donna? Are there wolves in sheep's clothing? Are there tares amongst the wheat? Cast your burdens on Yahuwah and let him sustain you. Be so familiar with his voice that you know that counterfeit when it looms on the horizon. And even if it's a tear amongst the wheat or a wolf in sheep's clothing, cast it on Yahuwah. He will take care of it. And let him sustain you. He never allows the righteous to be shaken. For you, O Eloah, do bring them down to the pit of destruction. Men of blood and deceit do not reach half their days. But I trust in you. Praise Yahuwah. The enemy has a voice. Isaiah 14:11-14. I know there's some out there that don't think this is about the adversary. I do. We see pictures in the physical and in the spiritual. We got pictures going on left and right in our scriptures. It's all about a picture. Oh, that's not right. Your arrogance has been brought down to Sheol, and the sound of your stringed instruments. Oh my goodness. The maggot is spread under you, and worms cover you. Those that have the adversary himself, is brought down. Sheol has the meaning of grave. Sheol's a conglomerate of a bunch of words, hell in the Greek. How you have fallen from the heavens, O Hallel, son of the morning, trying to be the bridegroom. You have been cut down to the ground, you who laid low the nations. It's on a cycle. It's like time. He knows it. He knows it. He knows God's mercies are new every day. He knows about the bridegroom coming out. He knows about everything being done in time and season and place. For you have said in your heart, let me go up to the heavens. Let me raise my throne above the stars of Eloah. And let me sit in the mount of appointment on the sides of the north. Let me go above the heights of the clouds. Let me be like... Somewhere I did a word study on that. I don't remember if it was in the Ruby video. The Most High. Like, okay, in the likeness of, okay, he's talking about, that word comes from blood, about being the DNA, which is the micro scale, maybe quantum scale if you want to call it that. It's the micro scale. It's the scalar. He wants to be that. He wants to be the macro scale. That's why the Starlink, the Earth grid, and the DNA. He wants to be Yah that's running through your veins. But you are brought down to Sheol, to the sides of the pit. Those who see you stare at you and ponder over you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble and shook rains? Okay. We ought to be laughing at this. Death to this flesh is great. Let's just get it over with, okay? In the spiritual and in the physical. Come on already. Who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who would not open the house of his prisoners. Yahusha came to set the captives free from sin and from death and from the adversary. Let's get off this prison, quote-unquote, prison planet. Not that the planet is leaving, it's just going to be all renewed. It's going to be like it should have been when the seed was at the beginning. Ezekiel 28:12-19. Let's pull it up in the E-sword. Maybe. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the sovereign of Zor. And we know it's speaking of the adversary here. And you shall say to him, Thus said the Master Yahuwah, Thou sealest up Thou sealest up the pattern, the tikkun, complete in wisdom and perfect in loveliness. The sum of it all, the weight of the matter. He knew what the king was doing. He was a covering cherub. We're going to see that. Complete in wisdom and perfect in loveliness. You were in Eden, the garden of Eloah. He was there. Every precious stone was in your covering. Ruby, topaz, diamond, beryl, shoham, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, emerald, and gold. The workmanship of your settings and mountings was prepared for you on the day you were created. The rhythmic beating of a tambourine. This is a rhythmic beat. So the Russians saw it as the crystal over, made it like a crystal over the earth. And we saw that back, Michael Tellinger talked about it. It's like the rhythmic beat. Why it's of a tambourine? I haven't done a word study on it yet. I feel like Miriam played a tambourine. The workmanship of the rhythmic beat of all of these stones, lattice work, crystals. Yes, they have a frequency, and no, we don't need to practice witchcraft to know that. Of thy pipes. It's as a gem in the Strong's, was prepared for the day that thou was created, because he was the covering cherub. You were the anointed cherub that covered, and I placed you. You were on the set-apart mountain of Eloah. You walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. The adversary knows the beat. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. By greatness of your trade you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. So I thrust you from the mountain of Eloah, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stone of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your loveliness. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor, the proud crown of Leviathan. I threw you to earth, fighting in his heart that he wanted to be Yahuwah. I will lay you before sovereigns to look at you. You profaned your set-apart places by your many crookednesses, by the unrighteousnesses of your trading. Therefore, I brought forth fire from your midst. It has devoured you, and I turned you to ashes upon the earth before the eyes of all who see you. That's going to happen. It's going to be in the lake of fire. And we're going to say, who was this that we allowed all this to be brought upon us? All who knew you among the peoples were astonished at you. Waste you shall be, and cease to be forever. He is familiar with the beat. He is familiar with the pattern. We're going to see something about patterns in a little bit. Revelation 12:9 says, "Oh, the adversary leads the whole world astray." Well, he doesn't lead the whole world astray, because whole or all doesn't always mean whole or all. It can be all of a certain group, because Yahuwah was going to destroy all that had breath, yet Noah and his family and some animals still live. So all can mean a group of all of a certain group, like all the giraffes, not all the animals, but all the giraffes. Can be just a certain group. How about those that would be led astray, that aren't so familiar with the truth, that when the counterfeit looms on the horizon, they don't even understand the beat, the music, the sound, the word, the tone, the cadence, the pitch. Psalm 59. Deliver me from my enemies, O Eloah. Set me on high from those who would rise up against me. Praise Yahuwah. Deliver me from the workers of wickedness. Praise Yahuwah. And save me from men of blood. They want to kill the elect. The adversary's got everybody else. He's looking for the elect. I don't think that's in the papers that I pulled, but for look, they have lain in wait for my life. Yes, they are. Yes, he has. Mighty men assemble against me. Yes, they are. For no transgression or sin of mine, O Yahuwah, that is correct. For no guilt of mine. They run and prepare themselves. Yes, they are. They've been preparing for a long time. Adversary's been preparing for a long time. Get the picture? Awake to help me and see. And you, Yahuwah Eloah of hosts, Eloah of Yisrael, awake to punish the nations. Not that he's asleep. Show no favor to any wicked traitors. Selah. They return at evening. They howl like a dog and go around the city. See, they belch out with their mouth. Swords are their lips. Get the picture? It's all about a sound. For who is listening? But you, Yahuwah, laugh at them. You mock all the nations. O my strength, my weapon that I am intimate with. I wait for you. For Eloah is my strong tower. My Eloah of loving commitment. Eloah does go before me. He lets me look upon my enemies. Do not kill them, lest the people forget. Scatter them by your power and bring them down, O Yahuwah, our shield. Maybe they're for those that still have a chance, that haven't got a stick or a swab. The sin of their mouth is the words of their lips. They are captured in their pride, the proud crown of Leviathan, and for the cursing and lying they utter. The sin of their mouth is the word of their lips. Not only are the words wrong, the heart motive may be wrong. The tone may be wrong. Maybe at the wrong place at the wrong time. Telling you to do the wrong thing. It's a full combination. Bring them to an end in wrath. Bring them to an end, that they be no more. and let them know that Eloah is ruling in Jacob to the ends of the earth, from one end to the other. Get the picture? And at evening they return. They howl like a dog and go around the city. They must like nighttime. They wander up and down, for nothing good happens at night. Well, I think we heard that when we were growing up. And whine if they are not satisfied. And I sing of your power. And in the morning I sing aloud of your loving commitment. Because the sun is like a bridegroom coming out of its chamber. Tekufa. For you have been my strong tower and my refuge in the day of my distress. O my strength, O my weapon, that I am intimate. To you I sing, the seed beginning. I press the beginning, Zamar, Zanar. For Eloah is my strong tower, my Eloah of loving commitment. What are we singing? Where does our strength come from? What vibration are we putting off? If he's our strength, and we're intimate with our weapon, how in the world are the elect deceived? Okay, so I want to go to, we're going to go to The Shape of Sound by Professor Dimitri again. I think this guy's the cat's meow, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, we're going to go to the 17-minute mark. I have no idea how long we're going to listen.
I want to put that out there as a kind of central preoccupation of, or maybe we'll just say elementary issue. Okay, what I now want to turn to is not individual notes, but chords. Okay, and I want to give you an introduction to what musicians mean when they talk about chords. So, a chord is a collection of notes. This thing we call the C major chord. Hopefully, can you all see this? Here's what I will do. I will erase this and move this up. Now, I'm going to play you a bunch of other C major chords. And what I want you to notice is how different they all look on the piano keyboard. And if I had musical notation, they would also look very different on the notated staff. That is a C major chord. Here's another C major chord. Whoops, sorry about that. Ignore those. And there, it's like, I keep choosing 4-note chords. There. This is a C major chord. That is a C major chord. That is a C major chord. They all look different on the keyboard. But of course, they all look the same up here. If you ask an 11-year-old what is a C major chord, your 11-year-old will say, it's the notes C, E, and G, silly. Because that's how 11-year-olds talk. And if you say which C, do you mean this one, that one, that one, that one? They will think about it for a second and say, it doesn't matter. Any C, any E, and any G. And if you say, well, which note comes first? The 11-year-old will say C first, then E, then G. And then you'll say, so this is not a C major chord. The 11-year-old will say, you're right, it doesn't matter what order the notes come. To be a C major chord, whoops, a C major chord on this circular space is represented by an unordered set of points that's got 0 or C, 4 or E, and 7 or G. And so the basic concept of a chord that musicians use is an unordered collection of points on the circle. The circle, remember, is constructed by our perceiving octave-related pitches as similar. So what it is to be a C major chord is to be those notes. Now what I would like to do is show you what it is to be an F major chord. So first we take C major chord, and now I'm going to show you an F major chord, and what we're going to try to think about is what major chord is consistent of that, F major chord. Here is an E major chord, and here's an E major chord. And you're probably getting the gist already. To be a major chord is to be related to all the other major chords by rotation. And rotation is important because it is an isometry, a distance-preserving operation. So it turns out that the musical brain actually doesn't care very much about where you are on the circle. For most of us, if I played a C major chord and then said, okay, here's a C major chord, and then had you go run around the building a couple times and came back and said, okay, let's go back to that C major chord. As long as I waited 2 or 3 minutes, you would not notice that I had played a different chord, which is kind of astonishing. It's like if I had a green
The
sweater
adversary
on,
knows
ran
this.
around the building and you came back and was wearing a blue sweater and said, okay, we have this green sweater. And you wouldn't notice that. On the other hand, we are highly sensitive to the distances between notes, while we're relatively
The space between.
non-sensitive to specific positions on the circle, unless we have this unique and special genetic mutation called perfect pitch, which is kind of like a superpower. Unless we have a superpower. People with perfect pitch, it's an amazing thing because it gives you this superpower, but it also makes you but they always say about how hard it is, because what they mean is they have to do a little bit of work sometimes, as opposed to the rest of us who have to do a lot of work all the time. Anyway, it's as if we were totally insensitive to the difference between blue and green, but we're highly sensitive to how the relation between blue and red was like the relation between green and orange. Okay, so we're very, very, very susceptible, very sensitive to distance.
So it's like a slow fade. So we're very, very susceptible if things go from here to there. But if it's this, the distance kind of stays the same, but it just the note changes just a little bit. It's all related. The adversary knows it. Let me put it in simple terms. He's not going to come and send the drunk down the road over to my house. Oh gosh, you guys couldn't hear any of that, could ya? Maybe you could. We're going to go back and play it again. I'm not going to start this video over. I'm going to turn on my desktop microphone. Is what it is, right?
Now I want to turn to is not even to notes,
3 minutes won't hurt.
chords. Okay? And I want to give you an introduction to what musicians mean when they talk about chords.
We must need to hear this again, huh? I might.
Is a collection of notes. This thing we call the C major chord. Hopefully, can you all see this? Here's what I will erase this and this up. Now I'm going to play you a bunch of other C major chords, and what I want you to notice is how different they all look on the piano keyboard.
A note, a harmony, and make the third, make the enclosed tetrahedra. See the triangle?
Here's another C major chord. Oops, sorry about that. Ignore those. You keep choosing 4 note chords. There. This is a C major chord. That is a C major chord. That is a C major chord. They all look different on the keyboard. But of course, they all look the same. If you ask an 11-year-old what is a C major chord, your 11-year-old will say, it's the notes C, E, and G, silly. Because that's how 11-year-olds talk. And If you say which
You could play the same thing
this one, this
with a
one,
different sound.
they will think about it for a second and say, it doesn't matter. Any C, any E, and any G. And if you say, well, which note comes first? The 11-year-old will say C first, then E, then G. And then you'll say, so this is not a C major chord? The 11-year-old will say, you're right, it doesn't matter what order the notes come. To be a C major chord, a C major chord on this circular space is represented by an unordered set of points that's got 0 or C, 4 or E, and 7 or G. And so the basic concept of a chord that musicians use is an unordered collection of points on the circle. The circle, remember, is constructed by our perceiving octave-related pitches as syllable. So what it is to be a C major chord is to be those notes. Now what I would like to do is show you what it is to be an F major chord. So first you get C major chord. And now I'm going to show you an F major chord. And what we're going to try to think about is what major chord this is. That is an F major chord. Here's an E major chord. And here's an E major chord. And you're probably getting the gist already. To be a major chord is to be related to all the other major chords by rotation. And rotation is important because it is
rotation.
An isometry, a distance-preserving operation. So it turns out that the musical brain actually doesn't care very much about where you are on the circle. For most of us, if I played a C major chord and then said, maybe it's a C major chord, and then I had to go run around the building a couple times and came back and said, okay, let's go back to that C major chord.
And so it is exactly what they do. Exactly what the adversary does. He'll play something, send us out to run around and be distracted, and come back in and move it up just a little bit. And we forget all about what we just heard.
As long as I waited 2 or 3 minutes, you would not notice that I had played a different chord, which is kind of astonishing. It's like if I had a green sweater on and then run around the building and came back and was wearing a blue sweater and said, okay, you have this green sweater, and you wouldn't notice that.
And it happens with vision as well.
On the other hand, we are highly sensitive to the distances between notes, while relatively non-sensitive to specific positions on the circle unless we have this unique and special genetic mutation called perfect pitch, which is kind of like...
It's all about the space in between, eh? It's all about how it works on the cycle with the magnetism.
Because it gives you this superpower, but it also makes you... They always say about how hard it is, because what they mean is they have to do a little bit of work sometimes. That's what we have to do a lot of work all the time. Anyway, it's as if we were totally insensitive to the difference between blue and green, but we're highly sensitive to how the relation between blue and red is like the relation between green and orange. Okay, so we're very, very, very very sensitive to distances as opposed to individual position. One thought about this is that this is connected to hearing commonalities in speech between men, women, and children, all of whom speak at different pitch levels.
Hear that?
Who are going to be making very similar contours, right? So you can imagine, or singing the same song, right? You can imagine that a baritone man will sing naturally want to sing down there, whereas a little child might more naturally sing.
And the adversary knows it, and he's going to play to that in everyone.
Up there, and we need to be able to. It's more important to do resemblance in one of those two things than. Okay, so what it is to be a major chord is to be related by rotation. It's to have the distances 5, 4, and 3 in that particular order. What it is to be a minor chord, as many of you know, that's minor.
How about that?
And that's major. And so they're related by the operation that geometers call reflection, which musicians call inversion.
The reflection in the mirror?
Have the same distances between the notes, but going upwards in one direction and going downwards.
Up, spin, down, spin.
It is also useful sometimes to think of major. It is useful to think of major and minor as being related by what I call approximate rotation, because you can move from major to minor by approximately rotating. So, in many musical contexts, the exact relation of reflection is less important than the approximate relation of rotation. Okay, so that's what it is to be a chord. A chord is a collection of points on a circle, and a chord type is a set of distances so that it relates all chords by rotation. Now, while I'm here,
it relates all things by rotation.
Another elementary property of musical coherence is that in many musical styles, we want our chords to sound roughly similar. Okay? So there are many musical styles that use consonant chords like I'm using. There are also plenty of musical styles that use more advanced chords. There are plenty of musical styles, mostly written by graduate students, that use highly simple chords.
That's chaos.
There's almost no music that and actually, jazz musicians tell each other, look, if you're going to use complicated harmonic chords, your tonic chords should not be a. That doesn't work. You've got to have a kind of consistency between.
Feel that vibration?
And Arnold Schoenberg said this too. He said, look, follow me, and if you use these dissonant chords, you better not have it, and any of these guys in there, because it's just going to sound wrong. So, the notion of harmonic consistency feel very deeply into our musical expectation to the point where people generally laugh.
Okay, so I'm hoping you get the gist. They know what works well together. It all comes from music being the first, well, as an example, music being the quote-unquote first, well, it is the first unified field, because first was the sound. It was the seed beginning. First was the sound, and the note, and it worked in harmony with another note, and then it created a quote-unquote chord, or a tetrahedra. And it's a rotation inside a rotation inside a rotation inside a rotation, okay? And the Adversary has come back to this point where he knows this. It's MK Ultra, Super Soldiers on steroids. All these different things on steroids. Does he ever play that chaotic mess? Yeah, yes he does. He causes the chaos. But he also knows how to come in with a sweet sound to lead you whatever direction, individually or as a group. Yahuwah has created all things in order. I don't think we have the fullness of it, because I personally, in my personal opinion, and I don't have any evidence of this because we're not there. I think everything was probably spaced. I want to say it was spaced equally. It was in perfect order. This perfect resonance and frequency that was in the beginning. Music is very tricky. Sound is very tricky. It has to be, for the Adversary to accomplish this, he has to understand, which he does. But we need to understand that he understands, and that he is leading us if we let him, if we're not so familiar with the truth, with the sound, with the frequency, with the the unknowing knowing that's in our body. Just a slight movement in the rotation, the frequency, and the sound will draw us in the way that they want us to draw us using the magnetic field in time and season and place. What are they after? Well, they're after the DNA. They're after a lot of different things, but one thing I want to point out here is the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system activates a rest and digest or a feed and breed response after stressful events, which conserves energy and replenishes the system. It reduces bodily arousal, slowing the heartbeat and the breathing rate. They want to keep us in a constant state of panic so that our body never gets to rest and digest or feed and breed. So now we're going to look at these great things that a website that I found is just, I can't even believe it's still out there. I'm going to use this, and it is for educational purposes only. It is called Control of Choice by Application of the Electromagnetic Field, Equivalence of Spoken Words, Meditation by Emotional Meaning Rather than Linguistic Dimensions. It's by Faye Healy, M.A. Persinger, and S.A. Corin. It's from Loreton University. Perpetual and Motor Skills, 1997, 85, 1411 through 1418. Copyright Perpetual and Motor Skills, 1997. We're not going to read a lot of it, though I'd love to read all of it. We're going to read the summary section and the discussion section. Electromagnetic equivalents, about 1 microtesla, of the acoustic signature of spoken words were applied across the temporoparietal lobes, I know I said that wrong, by an array of external solenoids. Participants were asked to select the target words within a group of words. The experiment group of 7 chose the target word or words that shared its emotional dimensions, activation and evaluation, more frequently than did the reference group of 6 who received no electromagnetic equivalents. Implications for the neurocognitive detection of the emotional, cognitive components of a word stimuli when transformed into electromagnetic equivalents rather than direct images or word sounds are discussed. Well, they were studying what of word stimuli transformed into electromagnetic equivalents rather than seeing an image or hearing the actual sound of the word. The electromagnetic stimulant of that word was being fed to some of these people to see if they would pick that word in the list, or they would pick its emotional equivalence, which was in the 4 parts of the brain. The results of this experiment did not support the hypothesis that a person's selection of words can be affected by the application of the electromagnetic field whose signature stimulates the acoustic components of that word. The results, so they didn't pick the word that they were given the electromagnetic stimuli of. However, the results of this experiment suggested that the application of the electromagnetic equivalents of a word affect the selection of words that share emotional meaning to the target words. They want you to be in an emotional state constantly. The possibility that the effect was artifactual is minimal. where the participants hearing the specific word, or were its representations occurring within neurocognitive modules below the level of awareness, a specific effect would have been noted with the target words only. Instead, the participants who received the fields were more likely to select words which shared either the evaluative, or activation dimensions, because these words were phonetically different and categorically unrelated. The likelihood of subliminal phonetic or lexical decoding appears minimal. So these emotional words that were attached were not phonetically the same, and they weren't even in the same category. It's like door and dog. Oh, maybe you get dog door. It's like door and microphone. One interpretation of these results is that the electromagnetic equivalents of the acoustic patterns, there's acoustic patterns, there's an acoustic beat, e.g., words may affect a person's behavior through the emotional dimensions and linguistic processing. Look around. They didn't even hear the word. This wasn't even the word being spoken. This was the stimuli of the electromagnetic system. That's just how music works. It's all on the same. Get the picture? The emotional dimensions of words primarily affect the person's responses, which includes feelings, opinions, or attitudes towards the corresponding stimulus without correlative awareness or verbal imagery. Weren't even aware. How many people do we know that aren't aware? Although the person can generate attributions to the cause of their feelings, impressions, or opinions, these logical or verbal explanations are frequently ad hoc rationalizations and are also frequently inaccurate. We have hypothesized that the affective dimensions of words involve the neurocognitive processes. Gee, I wonder why they want your brain, because I can't get to the authority that's inside of you in your heart. Unless, it's another topic. We have hypothesized that the affective dimensions of words involve the neurocognitive processes that emphasize traditional right hemispheric functions within most people. These experiences are 1. Strongly emotional, 2. Relatively inaccurate with respect to categorical detail or imagery, 3. Quickly evoked, and 4. Affect behavior without being represented into the left hemispheric equivalents of awareness. It's like they don't even know what's happening. They don't even know. The latter occurs because the conscious awareness concerning the sense of self and the recognition of changes during introspection are strongly dependent upon linguistic processes typically associated with the left hemisphere. They gotcha. Frey's original work involved the propagation of symmetrical, redundant pulses carried by microwaves. Get your pulse on? It's constantly pulsing. The Wi-Fi is constantly pulsing. It can be caused to pulse differently, rates and that kind of thing. Anyway, peripheral effects upon the physiological transducers of acoustic energy to the digital sequence of brain language were considered the most likely explanation. Digital sequence of brain language. The digital sequence in the sky. He called it a binary code. Okay. It's a macro scale and a micro scale. The present results indicate that complex information carried as electromagnetic patterns into the brain may not affect hearing experiences, but can affect a person's choice without corresponding experiences that are attributed to thinking or decision. Can affect your choice without thinking or decision. Whether the information can be coded upon microwave carriers and propagated through space to influence large populations must still be discerned. Okay, this was 1995. Persinger. Look around. In extending these notions, one may speculate that such influence would not require technology that must first include detailed information or imagery within the average brain. Instead, simple classical conditioning paradigms could be applied. For example, the presentation of specific images concerning a target stimulus, a national group, person, or event, through conventional modalities such as television, would be paired, particularly during local night, when right hemispheric processes are intermittently enhanced with an electromagnetic word equivalent that evokes negative affective experiences. Can you hear what I'm saying? The temporal contiguity, oh my gosh, I don't know why I can't read these words today. Contiguity between the specific image of the target stimulus and the unpleasant effect evoked by the electromagnetic pattern would increase the likelihood that the feeling or emotional meaning about the target stimulus would be more averse. With large populations, such general but weak effects could shift the direction of group decisions. Okay, isn't that the truth? We must be able to see that today, huh? Again, that was 1997. Next, we're going to look at infrasound, human health, and adaptation. An integrative overview of recondite hazards in a complex environment. Okay, we're going to read the introduction. Well, I guess we're not going to read the abstract. And this paper is actually by Michael A. Persinger. Received 8 June 2013, accepted 6 August 2013, published online 12 September 2013. The authors 2013. This article is published with open access at springerlink.com. So this article has open access. Some other paragraph I wanted to read. This article is distributed under the terms of Creative Commons Attribution License, which permits any use, distribution, or reproduction in any medium provided the original authors and the sources are credited. So there are references on this as well. Couple 3 pages of references. Get your hands on this article. I'd get my hands on this article. All right. We have quite a bit to go here. So, I'm going to pause. I'm actually going to put this together as part 2. But if I come back and I look different, I want you to know that I paused right here. Because it's getting late. It's getting dark. I need to go make dinner. I have another hour's worth of stuff at least that I'd like to cover. Maybe an hour and a half. Praise Yahuwah. May you all understand and find the truth and be so intimate, that we might be so intimate with our weapon that it is the song that plays as the authority inside of us, the seed beginning himself, that it would germinate and be, having been a sprout, growing up into a plant and a stalk and becoming a full head, that we might be found worthy, Yahuwah, to escape all these things, Father, to endure until the end, Yahuwah. We await you, Father. We await you, Yahuwah. Hallelujah. In Yahuwah's name, hallelujah. Okay, I will be back. Praise Yahuwah. Alright, shalom. Obviously, we're back from our break, and I'll be combining these 2 videos. Praise Yahuwah. We just thank you, Father, that again, you have given us all things for life and righteousness, Yahuwah. We thank you, Father, that you have overcome, that we are overcomers in you who overcame. We have nothing else, Yahuwah. There is nothing on this earth that will ever satisfy. There is nothing they can offer. There is nothing the adversary can say. There is nothing here. Nothing. For we look for a homeland, Yahuwah. Thank you, Father. In your name, Yahuwah, the breath of life that came to rescue us. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Yahuwah. Okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to see if we can finish getting the picture. Getting the picture. Did you see that? Getting the picture. Praise Yahuwah. We're either going to be connected with him or we're going to be connected up with them. Alright. So we're going to read next from a paper. Make sure I didn't hit anything. Okay. Oh no, I'm not going to read from that. We read from Control of Choice. Now we're going to read from, I've got a number 1, 2, and 3 there in the middle of the page. This one is Infrasound, Human Health, and Adaptation. An integrative overview of recondite hazards in a complex environment by Michael A. Persinger. Received the 8th of June 2013, accepted the 6th of August 2013, published online the 12th of September 2013, copyright the authors 2013. This article is published with open access at springerlink.com. We are going to read the introduction, important consideration, and a couple other paragraphs out of this article. A great article. Absolutely great article. Okay, let me have a drink of this coffee first. Introduction. The human body is composed of several trillions of cells that exist within a three-dimensional matrix. You have to watch part 1 and the beginning of part 2. I guess it'll be on here. Alright, the human body is composed of several trillions of cells that exist within a three-dimensional matrix that displays mechanical properties including intrinsic vibrations and sound emissions. Oster and Jaffe, 1980. Brozovich and Pollock, 1983. Okay, I'm not going to... I hate not to read all the authors that he quotes, but if I miss one, my apologies. If I skip one, my apologies. Feel free to go find this article. It's out there. Mechanical properties including intrinsic vibrations and sound emissions in the range between 10 and 30 hertz cycles per second. Let me stop there. I'm sorry. There's sound that we can hear, the sound that's below our hearing, the sound that's at high frequency, there's low frequency, there's sound that we can hear. In here they're talking about low frequencies and sounds that you can hear. But just know there's high frequencies as well. These cells and the tissues and organs they compose are exposed to mechanical or sound pressures and energies from a variety of natural and humanly constructed sources that propagate as waves through the air or through the ground. The Shemayim is in the air, the earth is the ground. The time variations of mechanical pressures between approximately 20 hertz, 20 times per second, and 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz, are experienced normally as sound when they stimulate the eardrum. As the frequency decreases below 100 Hz, the tone is experienced with less continuity until Hz, where it is perceived with intermittence. The lowest frequency for tonal sensation is, I think that's a negative, 20 Hz. Traditionally, sound pressures below 20 Hz are defined as infrasound, and those above 20 kHz are ultrasound. From a biological perspective, the distinction is not discrete but can range across 100 Hz. In both natural and cultural contexts, the energies associated with sound are usually not restricted to a single sinusoidal or pure frequency, but distributed across a wide spectrum, such that infrasound and low-frequency noise are considered a more realistic continuum for this domain. At very low frequencies between 100 Hz, at very low frequencies below 100 Hz, the experiential effects from vibratory stimulation within the ears or generated within the whole body can appear to be the same. Airborne sound of sufficient intensity enters the body by direct absorption and stimulates non-auditory tissue that produces physiological effects, essentially similar to whole body vibrations. Your cells are absorbing the vibrations and you're having physiological effects, Mr. Delta. The distinction between whole body mechanical vibration and direct absorption from sound pressures becomes less important as the frequency is reduced. Whole body vibration involves the transfer of energies in the range of 0.5 to 80 Hz from environmental vibration to the human body through a broad contact area. This transition range, 20 to 100 Hz, is also frequently associated with perception of subtle natural sources. For example, some people during optimal weather conditions and time of day experience a 20 to 40 Hz hum associated with the jet stream approximately 10 kilometers overhead. Brown, 1973. Now remember, this is, I can't even remember what I say, it was from 2013. Okay, this is, you're being affected. You're being affected. Below 1 Hz fluctuations in pressure within the air or solid structures in contact with the body are described as in seconds or periods, the time between two successive peak amplitudes. The equivalent frequency, oh, that sounds like a pulse to me. The equivalent frequency, the inverse of duration, is millihertz. A period of 1,000, about 16.7, I'm going to say that's minutes, is 1 millihertz. Most of these periods or frequencies range between 5 and 7 millihertz, which is the background free oscillation of the Earth, rotation, that is coupled with the lower atmosphere, to about 10 Hz. Their amplitudes overlap with the intrinsic oscillations. They overlap with the intrinsic oscillations of the human body. The natural sources of infrasound include severe weather systems, special winds, microseisms, auroral activity. You must have needed Starlink for something. Geomantic storms. Hello, HARP. Volcanic phenomena. Did I leave out Starlink? Constructed sources originate from air moving through long duct systems in large buildings and within moving vehicles such as automobiles or adjacently to operating aircraft. The linear distance between, now this is about things that are right here in our natural, but it's everywhere. The linear distance between modern large buildings of different heights generate infrasound from rapid horizontal movement of air and wind. More recently, the proliferation of wind turbines have increased substantially the background stimuli associated with these frequencies. Need some wind power? Not that wind power is a bad thing. Talk about another purpose. One of the fundamental premises of the physical sciences is that structure dictates function. Small changes in the structure of molecules, such as the substitution of phosphate or a hydrogen ion, can markedly affect the molecule's function and change the concentration required for its biochemical effectiveness. Nothing like a change. Large molecules have the capacity to be multifunctional depending on the local chemical context, unless you've had it changed. Yeah, I got my snark on today, I think. Phenomena manifested as waves, such as acoustic pressures or electromagnetic fields, also display potent configurations, except they are expressed as temporal rather than spatial patterns. Pure sine waves, or simple time-varying patterns, are found less frequently in the environment than complex acoustic and electrical magnetic patterns that have the potential to mediate information between the environment and cells at very low levels of intensity. Hello, alpha, beta, gamma, theta, and delta. And somewhere lambda's hanging out. Relying on only the average intensity over time for these sources, such as infrasound, as indicators of their importance, is about as useful as only measuring the loudness of a conversation to discern its syntactic content and meaningfulness. To discern the potential impacts of these energies upon human health and adaptation, there must be a clear differentiation between the experiences or awarenesses associated with their presence and the effects from their presence. The latter does not require awareness or accurate attribution. Almost sounds somewhat like the paper we read on control of choice. Somewhat, but there's more to it than that. To appreciate their potential influence, actual numerical values for the ranges of pressures and range of frequencies are essential. To accommodate the mechanisms by which they interact with the human body, knowledge of its intrinsic vibrations, which would encourage resonance phenomena, must be considered. Have to know the intrinsic valuation of the vibrations that is in us, what we will respond to. Well, if you can kind of get everybody on the same page with a little change, there you go. That'll help this whole agenda right along. This paper is an integrated overview of the general features of infrasound and their potential and measured biological and behavioral effects. Do you get the picture? It's all about a wave. It's all about the sound. When somebody said, we're chasing an invisible enemy, literally, you literally are chasing an invisible enemy because you will never catch it. You can only damp it. You'll never catch it. It is not intended to be an exhaustive review. To provide context and meaningfulness to this complex issue, an interdisciplinary perspective is provided. The emphasis upon quantitative examples and solutions is purposeful to provide the reader with one perspective, to appreciate the reasoning by which different disciplines derive conclusions about biophysical processes. By understanding the basic nature of forces, pressures, and energies Through dimensional analysis, the reasoning upon which conclusions are based becomes available to all of us rather than to a technical few. The reasoning upon which conclusions are based becomes available to all of us. We can all know and understand the game, if we so choose. Alright, next section says, important considerations. Although there are billions of physical events per second that move through the volume occupied by the body, think of that. Although there are billions of physical events per second that move through the volume occupied by the body. I don't know, I can't say the guy's name. Neurotransmitters, 1999. Only those that produce some measurable change within the organism are classified as stimuli. All experience is generated by cellular activity within the human cerebrum. It is approximately 1.5 kilogram mass suspended in a fluid and more or less sealed within a relatively harder 7 millimeter thick boundary of the skull. I can't get to the word that is stored up in your heart. They can't get. If you have a Loa as the authority inside of you, and do not take this beastly mark, they can't get to your. They can't get to your brain because they can't get to the authority that's inside of you. They can never get to your heart unless you allow yourself to be changed. The distinction between experiences from stimuli and the effects of stimuli has been known for decades. Recent developments in neuroscience indicate that stimuli can significantly affect the brain directly without a person's awareness. Absolutely no clue. And you know why? They don't want one. They love the flesh. They love the darkness rather than the light. I just want to sing that song. Every little thing is gonna be alright. It's gonna go back to normal. No, it's not. No, it's not. Praise Yahuwah. For example, Burns et al. 1997 showed that small changes in the grammatical structure during reading that were not perceived by participants produce conspicuous local changes in discrete subsurface structures, such as the anterior cingulate that is associated with the emotional bonding and effect. Hoshiyama et al. 2003 demonstrated subconscious responses within the right hemisphere during the presentation of facial patterns, even when the stimuli were presented for subliminal durations, or once every 2 seconds, 0.5 hertz. In general, a critical mass and organization of neurons in the cerebral cortices is required for awareness. Friedrich et al. 1992. The brain affects all of the organs and tissues. Cerebral changes, even without awareness, can determine adaptation. And now they're all adapted to it. It's like the new normal. You're never going to catch this thing. It truly is an invisible enemy. And here's the thing. All things that are seen are made by that which is not seen. The enemy can never bring this to perfection because he'll never be we'll call it a prime residence. He'll never be Yahuwah. Okay? Those are just words that they use. And why they're true, it's all throughout Scripture. The enemy wants to be Yahuwah. And He's put it in us to want to be Yahuwah in our own lives. The non-specific experiences that include ill feeling, malaise, lethargy, low-level nausea, dizziness, mild apprehension, and diminished concentration are often reported in the presence of infrasound with or without awareness of its presence. I don't remember reading that before. We're going to take a look at that sometime. Secondly, the greatest source of variance in human studies is individual differences. Different people can respond, if at all, quite differently to the same physical stimulus. We need everybody on the same page and make it so much easier. You just run this one wave and everybody's on the same page. For example, some individuals can become very ill in response to consuming a specific food, such as peanut butter, while most people consume the material without incidence. Some individuals develop nausea in response to interactive video games. We throw them out, while most people do not. Throw them out anyway. The most well-documented case of stimulus-specific anomalies have been reported for epileptic patients. Nervous system. Isn't that interesting? Complex partial seizures, in particular, can be evoked by specific smells, musical chords, and even word sequences. Well, how do you like that? The etiology for the hypersensitivity to very low levels of energy with a particular spatial or temporal pattern is related to an often subtle physical characteristic within the microstructure or chemistry of the person's brain. Appreciation for the importance of individual differences and vulnerabilities when considering the effects of infrasound cannot be overemphasized. Recognition of these differences was instrumental for differentiating the powerful effects of changes in weather, air masses, or geophysical factors upon populations. Persinger, 1987, A and B. So a change in a whole group's DNA to make everyone on the quote-unquote, shall we say, same page. We'll take care of these differences. We'll just make things so much easier. For infrasound, individual variability is particularly important. Even during short-term exposures to very high pressure fluctuations, the sensitivities of subpopulations can be significant. During earlier experiments, Moore et al., 1965, you hear these years on some of these? Involving, and that's not even long time ago, involving intense infrasound stimulations of spaceflight for only 2 minutes, reports included tickle sensations of the tympanic membrane, gagging, visual field vibration, middle ear pain, mild nausea, salivation, transient headache, and testicular aching. At very specific frequencies, such as 12 Hz, with pressure fluctuations typical of natural infrasound, some, but not all subjects, within an office setting, reported instantaneous and very intense ill feelings. Brule and Olesen, 1973. Get the picture? Let me continue on. As described by the persistent and seminal research of Costello Branco and Alves Pereira, 2004, maintained, vocation-specific, aircraft technicians, ship machinists, and pilots, exposure to very high intensities of infrasound and low-frequency sound can produce vibroacoustic disease with very specific characteristics. Pericardial thickening with no inflammatory process, and symptoms that can be differentiated from general stress. Looks like got some heart problems going on there. Sounds familiar. These observations do not mean that all individuals will experience similar sensations unless they're all the same, or got the same thing running through them. Near turbines, for example, or during intense natural conditions. These observations reiterate the importance of accommodating the complexity and differential sensitivities of individuals. The third, and perhaps most counterintuitive consideration, is that the magnitude of a phenomenon at the casually observable level is not always the critical characteristic that is most biologically effective. Scaling that is the levels of spatial and temporal analysis is important. For example, compared to the current density of a lightning strike, the charge movement along the axon of a neuron mediating action potentials would appear much smaller. However, the current densities for both phenomena are very similar. Persinger, 2012. What appears to be mundane and ineffective stimuli when presented in one form can be catastrophic when presented in another form. That it will be. Within the domain of low-frequency magnetic fields, with intensities similar to those encountered near computers or electronic systems. Got your phone? Murrigan et al. 2013 recently demonstrated that planarian, a type of aquatic flatworm, exposed to a specific pattern of fields for a few hours per day, dissolved within 2 hours if another temporally structured field was applied on the 5th day, but not after day 1. Let's run this pattern for 5 days, and then we'll run that one. There's a pattern to it all. It's not just willy-nilly. You know why? Because Yah made it that way. He made it that way from the beginning. It's all on a cycle. It's all about a pattern. The pattern is a scalar, whether it's cosmological or inside of you, quantum. It's all the same pattern. It's based on music. It's based on the waves that are in the air. It's all based on sound. I guess another time we'll talk about light, but sound. Because Yahuwah said, let there be light. The effectiveness of a stimulus pattern depends upon the information that is congruent with cell signaling and internal dynamics. Let me say that again. The effectiveness of the stimulus pattern, the pattern that is being run, depends upon the information that is congruent with cell signaling and internal dynamics. What is going to signal the cells? And affect the internal dynamics, physiologically or psychologically, in a human. Must be this congruent or pattern that will work. Some people it's different. So we gotta get everybody on the same page. Magnitude is less important. Stated alternatively, one can scream or whisper a sentence. The magnitude does not change the meaning within the syntax. That is correct. There is a way in which you speak to people. If I scream it at you, the meaning doesn't change. But the tone is now, the magnitude doesn't matter. It's the tone that matters. The syntax with the tone matters. Because sometimes it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. But it's still about what you say. But it's about how you say it. They run hand in hand. Okay, we're going to read section Pressures and Energy. You'll find that section. There's one about pressures and Oh, I missed one. When resonance is involved, the absolute magnitude of how strong the stimulus is less important than the frequency pattern and the narrow range of congruence for the intensity of the intrinsic and extrinsic vibrations. Resonance phenomena allow relatively weak stimuli that are temporally and spatially congruent within the system to interact with and significantly affect the stability of the system. In this instance, the fundamental unit is the cell. It's all about the frequency pattern. And what? It's all about the tone and the words that come with the tone. It's all about the pattern. I'll skip that one. Okay. Pressures and energies. I can find that one. Oh. Talks about microwaves. Alright. Okay. It's talking about water. We're mostly water. The threshold for hearing a whisper from pressure variations within the 1 to 2 kilohertz range is about 10 billion times less intense than the more or less steady pressure from the atmosphere. Yet we do not hear the atmosphere. Hearing requires a pattern of frequencies and the presence of a body structure to transform those pressures into energies of neurons that represent them in conscious experience. Are we not having that right here? And who are we resonating with? The voice of many waters? Are we amidst the sea of people which Babylon rides among? I mean, we are. But is that the wave we're riding? Intrinsic energy. About 10. I think this is what I want to read. Oh gosh, I don't remember what the J stands for. About 10 to the negative 20 J is also the quantum of energy involved with the sequestering of one nucleotide base within 1 ms, the duration of action potential, to a synthesizing RNA ribbon. The sequence of this digital system of base pairs determines the type of protein that is synthesized within the tissue and ultimately its structure and its function. If you change that, you change the structure and the function of the DNA. It's that simple. Okay. Conclusion section. The whole article is quite amazing. Conclusion. I'm sure that's... You would think it would be at the end, right? whole thing. Looks like the whole thing. It's not very long. Living systems, including the human species, have evolved with a natural environment. This is not saying anything about Darwin. I'm not saying anything about Darwin. I don't know what he's saying, but I'm not saying. It's evolution. With a natural environment whose properties are complex but not intractable to measurement and understanding. They can measure it, they can understand it, we can understand it. Although the partitioning of the formal description of natural phenomena by different scientific disciplines may have satisfied the conditions of human cognition, the subsequent traditions may have obscured the essential relationship between human adaptation and the natural environment that is optimally discerned through true interdisciplinary approaches. True, natural, wholesome, organic approaches. Human beings can be described as both mechanical and energetic organisms. Correct. There are multiple sources of stimuli that exhibit energetic equivalents, whose values in turn converge with those essential for the function of the cell, the organ, and the organism. The frequencies that have been defined as infrasound from natural, manufactured, and as yet unknown sources have the capacity to resonate with the human body. This review of the scientific literature and the quantitative illustrations derived from the systematic application of known principles may facilitate the acquisition of the precision required to differentiate between natural hazards and natural benefits, sickness and healing, rather than depending primarily upon political and social agendas, which are now being used for a political, it's not really political, and social agenda. It's all based on the stuff we talked about in part 1, beginning of part 2. There went my paperclip. That we're going to talk about some more here and some other stuff. We're going to just read a couple more little articles and the just short section things. You get the picture? They're not calling it a delta wave because it's a change. Delta's the dal in Hebrew. It comes from the door. They found the door. The next one behind it is the lamb. Do you know what a dal and a lamb together is? It's a dal. It's a door. Come on. Alright. The next article is inaudible high-frequency sounds affect brain activity. Hypersonic effect. I'm going to pull that up over here. You can Google that on the internet and probably find it. It is by, oh boy, Tsutomu Uhashi is the first person. And there's et al. I'm going to put it that way. Department of Kansai Brain Science, et al. Whole bunch more stuff. And we're just going to go to the conclusion section. Let me just do a find for it. Okay. In conclusion, our findings that showed an increase in alpha EEG potentials, activation, of deep-seated brain structures, a correlation between alpha EEG or RCBF in the thalamus and a subjective preference toward FRS gives strong evidence supporting the existence of a previously unrecognized response to high-frequency sound beyond the audible range that might be distinct from more usual auditory phenomena. I could hear it with my ears, but this I can't. Additional support for this hypothesis could come from future non-invasive measurements of the biochemical markers in the brain. I wonder if this was before or after it was mapped, such as monoamines or opioid peptides. That's all I want to read. That's pretty self-explanatory. Unrecognized response. Well, recognize it, because it's all around. Okay. And article number 3. High frequency affects cells. Body frequencies article. This is an article. And how our body listens to vibrations. It's from Science. Boy, I'm speaking today. Science Daily. The Université de Genève. That was fun to say. Summary. We all know the feeling of a mobile phone vibrating in our hands. We perceive these vibrations so clearly thanks to specialized receptors that transduce them into neural signals sent to our brain. But how does the latter encode their physical characteristic? Neuroscientists have discovered that feeling a phone vibrate or hearing it ring is ultimately based on the same brain codes. To understand this, neuroscientists from the University of Geneva have observed what happens in the brains of mice whose forepaws perceive vibrations. They discovered that neurons in the somatosensory cortex are activated in a manner similar to those in the sound-reactive auditory cortex. These results, published in the journal Nature, suggest that feeling a phone vibrate or hearing it ring is ultimately based on the same brain codes. If you place a glass of water on your desk, you can probably see on its surface the concentric oscillatory motions created by the small movements that occur nearby. These oscillations are caused by vibrations that propagate through the floor, desk, glass, and all other solid surfaces. Isn't it interesting? It's a glass of water. And your water. These vibrations are also important sensory stimuli that we use to detect, for example, an approaching train, or to identify the familiar step of our office neighbor. We live surrounded by vibrations that are extremely important in how we perceive the world. Some of them we're not even aware of, explains Daniel Huber at the Department of Basic Neurosciences at the UNIGE, that's University of Geneva, Faculty of Medicine. He led this work. So, we wanted to know how the brain perceives and represents them. Using two-photon microscopy, Daniel Huber's team visualized the activity of hundreds of neurons in a mouse's somosensory cortex as vibrations of different frequencies were delivered to its forepaw. Do you think this is new? This is nothing new. You are the mouse. You have been the mouse. Our ancestors have been the mice. Like in the auditory cortex, individual neurons were selectively tuned. They strongly responded to some frequencies and less so to others. It turns out that these neurons are preferentially tuned to a specific combination of frequency and amplitude, and that this combination corresponds to what the mouse actually perceives. That's why we have the Earth grid. That's why we have the sky grid. They're using the whole entire atmosphere. In other words, a mouse is unable to distinguish a high-frequency vibration with a low amplitude from a low-frequency vibration with a higher amplitude, explains Mario Prasad, a researcher in Dr. Huber's team and the study's first author. It is the same psychoacoustic effect detected in the auditory system, where the perceived pitch of a sound changes with both frequency and loudness. So here we've got some of this loudness involved that matters. We've got some pitch that matters. It's a combination of all these things that affect in such a manner. Thus, despite the fact that sounds, which travel through air, and vibrations, which are transmitted through solid matter, are processed by different sensory channels, they are both perceived and encoded similarly in the brain. Everything goes through the Pacinian corpuscles. In a second step, the researchers sought to identify the origin of the somasensory stimuli involved by performing a detailed histological analysis of the Pacinian corpuscles in mouse forelimb. Pacinian corpuscles are known to transduce high-frequency vibrations in mammals and are densely expressed in the dermis of the primate fingertips. That's interesting. Surprisingly, we found that vibration responses in the mouse brain stem from Pacinian, maybe I got it right that time, corpuscles located on the forearm bones, whereas they were totally absent on the paw's skin. Explains Geraldine Quinu, a student in the University of Geneva's master's program in neurosciences, who took charge of this detailed analysis. Using optogenetics, the scientists confirmed the link between cortical responses and the particular configuration of mechanoreceptors in the forelimbs. Could it be that the particular distribution of vibration-sensitive mechanoreceptors along the bones of the forelimb acts as a seismograph to listen to vibrations? Isn't that interesting? It's along the bones. Vibratory stimuli are indeed used by a number of living organisms to communicate through plants, branches, and other solid substrates. Our discoveries probably reveal the existence of an ancient sensory channel, which could be an evolutionary precursor of hearing. Okay, I'm not going with evolution and Darwin here. Concludes Mario Prasad. This somewhat vestigial yet highly sensitive modality might also explain how we are able to identify subtle clues linked to upcoming natural disasters, or why construction or traffic causes nuisances even when inaudible. So again, that's just a little information on, here we are with these vibrations and how the body listens to them. I mean, really. Did we get the picture now? It truly is an invisible enemy. Or we can just be resonant with Yahuwah. It's one or the other. It's black and white. We need to be so familiar with the truth that as this counterfeit looms on the horizon, especially for those who haven't taken this beastly mark, that we recognize it immediately. Because we are different. There was a study this Persinger did, and it was, we heard say over at CERN they're looking for the GOD gene. Okay. Well, this Persinger did a study on that same thing in the brain. Looking for it. And the way the synapses ran to find that. Very interesting. Another very interesting article. All right, so now we're going to go back to Dr. Dimitri. Ha ha. If he ever sees it, I hope he gets a kick out of that. We're going to go back to Professor Dimitri. And we're going to go to the quadruple hierarchy. Let me find it over here. Oh, that's not what we want.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I am very excited to talk today because this is really me putting together for the first time sort of where I am now, and actually the experience of putting this talk together caused me to really clarify some very big.
All right, I don't remember what minute mark we're going to go to. 1407 to 1501.
So, the way I put this is that a scale is an abstract collection of melodic slots, melodic locations that are localized neither in time nor in register, and in the geometry of music I use the metaphor of a frog hopping along a circular arrangement of lily pads that themselves could shift. So here a frog might be doing something like going forward 2, back 1, and as it is moving we see lily pad 4 here shifting its position from.
So that happens regularly in day, time, season, place. As we move along, other things are shifting, but yet we're moving at the same time. So that must all be considered.
Alright, that's what a scale is. Hopefully that was amusing, but a review for most of you. Now I'm going to talk about the fact that chords can act in a scale-like way. Alright? So despite their differences, now before we talk about any similarities between them, even though scales and chords are different, we can model them using very similar tools. At some very deep level, they behave in a similar way. Sometimes, however, objects that look like chords, we might think that they are chords, but if we examine more closely, we see that they're acting like small scales. So the difference between scale and chord, or abstract and concrete, is a matter of musical function, not constitution. It's not fixed for all time by the internal structure of our objects, but it's a matter of how a composer or improviser chooses to treat them. Okay? And now, we're getting into new stuff. I think that attending to chords' scale-like functions reveals a rich world of musical structure.
Okay, so we looked at this previously. The difference between abstract and concrete is a matter of function, not constitution. A resh is always going to be a resh. It's always going to be constituted of the meanings that it carries. But what function is it taking in this perspective? So now we've got the note, then we've got it in harmony with something else, and then we've got it where it makes a chord, which is 3, which we're going to see more about here. I've talked a lot about this 3, and I put the little triangle up. No, it's not an all-seeing eye and all this business here. That's what they use that, okay? But when you look at the pictures that I put out there that say, get the picture, get the picture, get the picture, it's just about a tetrahedra. And in the pyramids, they're a triangle. They know it. They know how all these things with frequency and vibration work. They have read the ancient literature. The thing is, we can see this in the scriptures, that Yahuwah created this in its perfection. And now the enemy is what? Prince of the power of the air? Is that what we hear? Okay. So, just wanted to take a look at that. It's a matter of their function, as how it functions with the rest. with another chord, with another chord, with another note, with another harmony. It's a matter of how it all... Am I rotating? I think I'm rotating. All right. Get the picture? We've seen this. Get the picture? Oh, I didn't know that was coming. All right. Well, I thought we were going to go to something else first. All right, this is one of my very favorite authors. This is the book that started me off understanding what in the world was up. I always knew it's Babylon's Banksters, Joseph P. Farrell, The Alchemy of Deep Physics, High Finance, and Ancient Religion. This one is by Farrell House. This is the book that started it all off for me, because, we always knew they're up to something. Oh, the government's bad. Again, all these things, quote unquote conspiracy theories. Gosh, I just want to tell the little story about how I found this book, but I'm not going to. Alright, page 264. Thank you to Mr. Farrell. I hope I footnoted it quite enough. I don't know what else to say about footnoting it. Pages 264 we're going to read, and then page 275 to 283. Just in understanding what the adversary does and how it works. We've read quite a bit about it, some scientific studies they've done. For living with organisms, Dr. Meehl himself alluded to, and more importantly, mankind, one arrives at the final component and resonant cavity of this form of energy, which you spoke about previously. You have to go read the book. But the final component and resonant cavity of this form of energy, which now we're down to the microscale or the quantum scale or the DNA scale, is human DNA. And its own remarkable embodiment of the very same. Okay, he calls them sacred geometries, okay? I know, where it's New Age. Oh, that's witchcraft. You know what? Yeah, I'll put this out here, okay? We had this beautiful picture. They can call it sacred geometry if they want. I don't really care what they call it, okay? Yah's put these beautiful pictures out here for us, and he's put them together for us in a beautiful fashion, and we don't even have a clue what they're doing, because we're told, don't you look at that. And people are running around doing all kinds of stuff, and nobody's got a stinking clue what's going on. But we're going to get a clue. Human DNA and the Hermetic Code. The I Ching. Ancient esoteric doctrine held that mankind was a microcosm, a little universe, who mirrored in his very constitution, i.e., his size, his shape, his makeup, and most importantly, in his unique combination of a corporeal component, a body, and a spiritual, or if one prefers hyperdimensional, okay, we're just reading the book now, component, his soul, and his personhood, the larger universe. British researcher Michael Hayes, taking this doctrine seriously, decided to examine it more closely, and as a result found a breathtaking connection between the code of sacred geometry and the fascination with certain numbers and human DNA, because it's a scalar. Not only is it cosmological, it's biological. Who are you vibrating with? In order to give myself, this is a quote from Michael Hayes, The Hermetic Code in DNA, the Sacred Principles in the Ordering of the Universe. In order to give myself a kind of visual aid, an image of the code in action, I had drawn up a diagram incorporating the key numbers of the biochemical components involved in the process. These were 4, 3, 64, and 22. That is, there are 4 kinds of chemical bases. It takes 3 of them to make what is known as a triplet condone, an amino acid template of which there are exactly 64 variations. Each of these codones correspond to one or another of 22 or more complex components, namely the 20 amino acids and the 2 coded instructions for starting and stopping the process of synthesis. In my diagram, the number 64, the number of triplet condone combinations, 4 times 4 times 4, was represented by a square grid, 8 divisions across and 8 down, like a chessboard. Once he had done this, however, Hayes noticed a very odd and striking... This is Mr. Farrell again. Once he had done this, however, Hayes noted a very odd and striking connection to one of esotericism's oldest systems of divination, the Chinese I Ching. I realized, in fact, that the whole diagram echoed the format of the famous Chinese work known as the I Ching, or the Yi King, whose 64 basic texts are each identified with 6-line symbol called a hexagram. But how does Hayes' table and its numbers of 4, 3, 64, and 22 resemble the I Ching in particular, and the Hermetic Code of sacred geometry in general? Hayes explains, quote, "The I Ching was intended for use as an oracle. You pose a question, toss 3 coins, and note the way they fall. A preponderance of heads gives an unbroken line, yang, positive. Tails, a broken line, yin, negative. The results are written down as a solid or a dashed line." The adversary knows this. Game. It's just made its way in different fashions throughout time. Repeat the action 6 times and you have called up one of the hexagrams. The accompanying text supplies your answer. Mr. Farrell, in other words, repeating the action 6 times and writing down each result, a broken or a solid line, one above another, will produce a picture of a solid and broken lines, of which there are only 64 possible results. Okay, this is so witchcraft. The pictogram or hexagram is then looked up in a book, which has a text explaining the divinatory properties of each hexagram. But where do the other numbers 4, 3, and 22 fit into this pattern? Oh, well, let me tell you, the adversary knows where he thinks they fit. So all he wants to do is be, this is the only way, is to combinatorially optimize. Because he'll never have perfect resonance with the people of Yah. Because the elect will not be deceived. Because it's not possible. Let's begin with the number 4. The number of fundamental chemical bases in the genetic code. Adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Oh, I said those right. Upon which the whole process of amino acid synthesis depends. The I Ching, I discovered, embodies exactly the same principle. The 64 hexagrams are actually constructed from 4 basic 2-line symbols known as the Hsing. These in turn were derived from the 2 fundamental lines, one broken and one unbroken, known respectively as yin and yang. He wants to be Yah so bad he can't stand himself. Next, the number 3. The genetic code, as was evidence, obeyed the law of 3 forces, which is why only triplet condones are evident in the process of creation. The 3 forces are initially represented in some book of changes by the original yin, negative female, yang, positive male, and neutral. The third invisible or mystical ingredient, the Tao, whatever all that means. I don't know, I don't practice witchcraft. But we can see it in the DNA. We can see it in music. First we have a note, then we have a harmony, then we have a chord. First we have First we have one of the chemical bases. Then we have 2 of them combined. Then we have the third. You don't count 1, 3. You count 1, 2, 3. Then we have the change in place, time, season, like the frog that was jumping on the lily pad. That would be almost like dynamic torsion. And then we have what holds it all together. Hayes recalls his reaction to this discovery, quoting Hayes again. By this time, having recognized so many similarities between the I Ching and the genetic code, it's wanted it so bad, the enemy wants it so bad he can't stand it. Can you hear this? I was convinced that I was onto something of profound importance, and my emotional state reflected this. I was highly charged. No way, I thought, could the identical features of these two apparently disparate systems be the product of mere coincidence, for they were not only identical in structure. It seemed that they each had a common purpose, which was to facilitate the process of, there's a word again, evolution. So far, so good. But what about the number 22? Was there some correspondence between the I Ching and DNA involving this number? Hayes puts the problem this way. Now these hexagrams, as I said earlier, just like the biochemical hexagrams of the genetic code, each consist of 2 trigrams. 2 3-line symbols, one above, one below. Oh my gosh, there's as above, so below. I didn't even know that was there. These people, I mean, the adversary's he's really tricky. He is really tricky. Music and vibration are very tricky. The trigrams, 8 in number, were derived from the 4 Hsang by successively placing over each of them the 2 original broken and unbroken lines. When these same 2 lines are placed over the 8 trigrams, the result is 16 figures of 4 lines. Or 16 figures. Wow. Look at 65,536, isn't it? Anyway. Repeat the process once again and you get 32 figures of 5 lines. And a final similar movement produces 64 hexagrams. Unlike the 4 and 5 line figures, the 8 trigrams, known as the Kua, are given particular prominence in the system. I mused over these for a long time, juggling with their numbers. 8 3s, 3 8s, 24. I needed 22. Close, but not close enough. Certainly the number 8 was an integral part of the overall symmetry, being the square root of the magical 64. But why did the sum of the trigrams not conform to the 22 condone signals of the genetic code? Why 24? Why 8? The answer came, this is Mr. Farrell again. The answer came when Hayes recalled that the numbers 4, 3, 64, 8, and 22 were significant components to the Hermetic Code and the sacred geometries of the West, and more particularly had a direct connection to music. Here we are, great Western music. The number 22 was a key number of the Pythagorean system, principally because of its musical aspect. What it represented was in fact 3 octaves of vibrations, or notes, 3 sets of 8, 24 components. But where does 22 come in? The answer is very simple. If one sits at a keyboard instrument and begins with the note C and goes upward 8 notes, using only the white keys, one will arrive back at C, an octave higher, exactly 8 notes later. Repeat the process again, and at the 16th note above the original, one arrives back at the C again, a 3rd time, and one arrives back on the 24th note, which is once again C. But since 2 of these C's are but repetitions of the original C, one might think of the 3 octaves as embodying the number 22 as well as 24. The implications of this were enormous, and Hayes was quick to perceive what they were. Quoting from Hayes. From that time onward, the summer of 1984, I spent several years exploring the maze-like annals of history. I automatically assumed that, If the Chinese and the Greeks were tuned in to this ancient science, then it was probably that so were some of the other traditions and civilizations. As it turned out, the evidence was overwhelming. Everywhere I looked, I saw musical symbols beaming back at me. Every known major religion and esoteric tradition in recorded history had embraced this science. Here, in fact, was the missing common factor that I had long felt existed. That magical ingredient that had given religious movements the power to affect the minds and hearts of billions in such a profound and extraordinary way. They were all unerringly based on the principle of harmony, a harmony that echoed in literally every single cells of our body, in our DNA, and in the genetic code. This is, therefore, a natural harmony. And they got figured out. The adversary is, let's just say he's on a roll. Let's just say he's probably combinatorially optimized to the point that he really can't optimize anymore, because then he'd be Yahuwah. He'd be Yahuwah. In other words, the numbers of the Hermetic Code, our sacred geometry, appeared to be a legacy of a long-lost civilization, predating all the high civilizations of the classical era, the Sumerian, the Egyptian, the Mesopotamian, the Chinese, and the essence of that code was not only musical, but genetic. It was, as Hayes concluded, a natural harmony, and DNA itself was a natural resonator and transducer of it. Okay, I want to read you everything up to page 285, but I'm not going to. You can find this book is online in PDF form. I know it is, and you can have your browser play it to you. There is a deep connection between music, DNA, the physical medium, cosmology, quote-unquote cosmology, the atmosphere. There is a deep connection between all of these things and the banksters themselves. What was that sentence we just read there at the end? I want to read this paragraph one more time. In other words, the numbers of the Hermetic Code, or sacred geometry, appeared to be a legacy of a long-lost civilization. Okay, it was Yah that created it from the very beginning. He created everything in its perfect order. I think we already saw Mr. Tellinger speak of the coding in the atmosphere, but it was like broken in pieces. Do you think that happened at the time that the adversary was thrown from the Shemayim? Of course it was. Predating all high civilizations of the classic era, the Sumerian, the Egyptian, the Mesopotamian, the Chinese, and the essence of that code was not only musical, but genetic. It was, as Hayes concluded, a natural harmony, and DNA itself was a natural resonator and transducer of it. So I want to watch this real quick. This is on the Solari report. There's no way to get a hold of her to ask her to use it. All I can do is recommend her channel. I can recommend the whole video. I can ask you to please go watch this. Please go watch this. You're not a person to sit down and read, okay? Okay. Please go watch this. I've recommended it in a couple other videos here recently. Please go watch this.
This second experiment is the laser reflector.
Vacuum flashing. Fringe element beside it. More in terms of cold, we're looking for patterns of connection network.
Okay, we're going to go to... Can't remember where we're going to go to, what minute mark. We're going to go to 56:07 and watch to 1:12:20.
In an article that I wrote in 2008 on exactly this topic, namely the holography of the genetic code, published in German in a book on global scaling, I pointed to the work of chaos game representation to visualize the order and pattern of DNA. There is very clear indication that the genetic code DNA is a fractal. The chaos game representation of Joel Jeffrey and other researchers has shown that the sequence of nucleotides in the genome is not random or following the Boltzmann constant, but displays global patterns and long-range correlations that linear perspectives do not show. Here we see the chaos game representation of a region of the human chromosome 11 which exhibits a characteristic fractal pattern. You can see in the upper right quadrangle this reddish area and its repetition on a smaller scale in other squares. Such scale invariance is part of a fractal process. Chaos game representation works like this. You assign the 4 nucleotides adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine to the 4 corners of the square. Then plot all of the nucleotides in their sequence, starting from the center and moving halfway to the corner of base 1. From there, move halfway to the corner of base 2, and so forth. Every point in a CGR thus represents one of the nucleotides. What is found in these self-similar patterns is that there are long-range correlations that extend across thousands of base positions and indicate the existence of a superior context. The correlations exist primarily in the non-coding sequences of the genetic material, which is evidence that the 98% of seemingly useless DNA have organizing and context-generating information. An additional fractal or self-similar pattern of the DNA has been found in its 3-dimensional structure. Researchers of so-called mechanobiology are slowly discovering that also the spatial organization of the chromosome is critical for regulating the genome. The 3-dimensional organization of the chromosome, a double helix of almost 2 meters length folded down into an area of only 2 nanometers, follows what is called a Hilbert curve, one of a family of shapes that can fill a 2-dimensional space without ever overlapping. The mathematical intelligence of this molecule is quite extraordinary, both in terms of group theory, as I will present in the future, as well as in terms of its geometric topology, as seen here. Keeping in mind that fractality and self-similarity are properties of holography, let us go back to the context providing long-range correlations that entrain the coding and non-coding sequences, fractally distributing the code across the complete genome and not just the genes. Such long-range correlations are also an acknowledged characteristic of human language texts. Context is a fundamental condition for error-free transmission. That is, the reproducibility and intelligibility of information. Several studies address the surprising precision of RNA transcription, namely the copying of genetic information for protein synthesis or cell division, pointing out that statistically the high degree of fidelity in transcription cannot be random, but suggests correcting and steering mechanisms that would ensure that the transcribed blueprints are properly understood. In particular, in view of the high ambiguity of the protein coding units which contain homonymic and synonymic sequences that do not provide an unambiguous recipe for protein synthesis. Homonyms in the genetic code are areas when different amino acids are coded by the same triplet units. And synonyms are cases when different triplets or codons code for the same amino acid. For example, it was clear very early, after the discovery of the genetic code, that the triplet uracil, which is for RNA, codes for both phenylalanine as well as leucine. It is furthermore understood that only the first 2 digits of the triplet are the defining units, so that different codons can code the same amino acid. This is one of the main difficulties pointed out by Gayayev. Given the widespread synonymy and homonymy of coding units, how does the cell decide which proteins need to be synthesized? And how does it decide so quickly?
Okay, I want to stop right here for just a minute. I'm going to watch a little bit more of this, not much. Again, I would encourage you to go watch the Celerity Report, watch this video in particular. I want to look at something here. I'm going to show you this Ancient Hebrew Lexicon by Jeff Benner. This is your Hebrew language, and this is why it's a 2-letter parent root, and it's not a 3-letter parent root. You count 1, 2, and 3. You don't go from 1, Yahuwah, to 3. It doesn't work like that. Not even in the natural. Here you have your Aleph, your L actually, your Al, your L. That's 1. He's each and every one of those letters. Each and every one. Then you combine the 2 together. Let's take Ab, for example. Where we get Abba Father. Now you've got a harmony of 2. Then you add your 3rd letter. So here's your harmony. That's what your harmony does. And then you add your 3rd letter. And you get just like the DNA. It's just like linguistics. It's just like what we see on a cosmological or atmospheric level. It's just like music. It's just like everything we've seen so far. It's a note, it's a harmony, it's a chord. And then these move in time and place and season. Kind of like, and in a way, dynamic torsion, I would say. But they move with time and place and season. Generation after generation after generation. Looks just like the language.
We must assume a superior, quasi-intelligent biocomputational structure of context that is derived from the genetic code as a holographic whole and not just from a small part of 2% of active genes. Ignoring this context and only working with the genes, Gayaev says, leads to erroneous and dangerous products of genetic engineering, among which the most striking are Craig Venter's Cynthia bacteria and GM foods. It is like in a literary text, where the reader or recipient understands meaning of individual words from the overall context of the story. Indeed, it turns out that DNA has the statistical properties of natural languages. Texts of natural human languages are characterized by a particular frequency distribution or power law of their constituent elements, which is defined by Zipf's law. In 1949, George Kingsley Zipf observed a statistical phenomenon requiring that the number of words or letters that occur n times in a text will decay with the inverse square of n. Or, to say this differently, if you count the words that occur in a text and assign a rank to each word based on the frequency or number of its occurrences, giving rank 1 to the most frequently occurring word, rank 2 to the second most frequent word, etc., you will arrive at an inverse proportion of frequency and rank. This is a hyperbolic distribution of the constituents of the text. George Kingsley Zipf proved this law for spoken and written texts of different authors. It is now understood as the law of context generation during the formation of a text. It means that the context itself defines the occurrence or suppression of words. Context guarantees coherence and meaningfulness of a message. Context arises from the interaction of the semantics of each word. A long chain of words remains meaningless as long as the collective semantic content is not provided. Zipf's distribution was also found in musical texts and has been defined as a measure for compositional context, proving that music is a natural language of itself. The discovery of Zipf's distribution in the genome is indicative of the communicative efficiency of DNA and a proof for the existence of a coherent context-embedded message in it. Again, this is only possible if all of the molecular material has meaning, and not just the coding genes. So you are not a graveyard or garbage bin of 98% of outdated material, unless you prefer to go along with the Richard Dawkinses of this world, who are satisfied with being regarded as an evolutionary animal. As a side note, the same Zipf distribution has been shown to exist in close approximation within the distribution of prime number factors in the Fibonacci series. Is there a correlation between DNA and prime numbers? There is, and it is probably the most fascinating and profound of all properties of DNA, which will be addressed in our next Solari science report. Given this similarity, or even coincidence, of language and DNA has made me convinced that the extensive efforts of intelligence agencies such as the NSA to collect all of our conversations, messages and writings is not so much because they are listening to what we have to say, but because they are out to capture the underlying Chomskyan deep structure of language itself that has creative power. Why has Google named itself Alphabet if there was not a profound interest in the fundamental properties of language? The breakthrough of artificial intelligence that we witness today is based on the deciphering of language itself. The most important threshold, I believe, was crossed with IBM's Watson computer, which for the first time implemented computing processes that come close to human thinking and learning. As you know, in 2011, Watson outperformed the best players at Jeopardy and did so based on algorithms of computational linguistics and natural languages. These computers are no longer programmed to retrieve information from a database, but are modern inference engines combined with neuromorphic chips, literally learning like a human brain to combine new statements and ideas, only much faster. Just a few weeks ago, IBM's new supercomputer, Summit, was announced, using deep learning algorithms, or what is called cognitive computing, combined with a huge memory base that puts AI beyond the reach of human minds. Its latest version, called Project Debater, is able to persuade a human subject to follow its argumentation, even on political issues. These artificial intelligence systems interact with their environment in real time and are able to change strategies along the course. They are learning from trial and error, using raw data much like a human, a process called reinforcement learning. The neuromorphic and cognitive computers are also involved in the Human Brain Project, or Blue Brain Project, that has discovered high-dimensional structures in the neuronal firing patterns of the brain, a topic that we will have to talk about. The near future will bring hyper-dimensional geometric networks combined with neuromorphic chips for fractal brain-like supercomputing. The genie is out of the bottle, and there is no turning back. The human brain has been decoded, and metacognition is being deconstructed, all based on the deconstruction and decoding of language. If now combined with the holographic wave nature of DNA that itself has linguistic properties, we all have to take notice. We have a duty to know. If there is a real resonance between DNA and human language, it should be possible to modulate DNA by language alone. And I'm afraid this has already been done, and the implications are powerful. In a frightening and yet groundbreaking set of experiments, the Gayayev group has used human language signals to initiate gene modification and expression. Curiously, this situation was forecast hundreds of years ago.
Okay, so that she really put together everything I said from the very beginning of part 1. She just puts it all together in one nice package. The whole video. Please go watch the whole video. Let me turn the air back on now that that's off. Okay, so do we get the picture? Do we get the picture? Revelation 17, 12 to 18. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 sovereigns, who have not yet received a reign, but receive authority as sovereigns with the beast for 1 hour. They have one mind. They have one authority in their heart that's inside of them, and it's controlling what they think. And they shall give their power and authority to the beast. They shall fight with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is the master of masters and sovereign of sovereigns, and those with him are called chosen and trustworthy, and that's who we want to resonate with. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the horse sits are the peoples, the crowds, the nations, and the tongues, because those are the ones that are resonating with the beastly system. Their natural DNA resonator will forever resonate with this beastly system. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these shall hate the whore, and lay her wasted naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For Eloah did give it into their hearts to do his mind, to be of one mind, one consent, to be in agreement, to give their reign to the beast, until the words of Eloah shall be accomplished. And the woman whom you saw is that great city, having sovereignty over the sovereigns of the earth. The whole point here is they are resonating. They now have one authority inside of them. That's where we get the word leb, authority inside. It's the word heart in Hebrew. That is the harmony. Leb. The lamed, the authority inside of you. It's harmonizing. It's picking up the resonance of everything else that's down there in that root line as it overlaps in time and place and in season, linguistically and contextually, over and over and over, generation after generation after generation. Do we get the picture? He wants to be Eloah. And they're resonating with that. And I liked what she said in there. All of a sudden, this AI can linguistically or contextually, or how I can't remember the words that she used, take you down the conversational path the debate path that it wants to take you down. They've got it. They're not Yahuwah, but they've got a good handle on what they want to accomplish in this day and age. Let's go to Michael Tellinger, Hidden History 10607. I don't think I have him up. I do. 10607. Let's make him a little bigger here.
deep as he wanted, as wide as he wanted, with sound. And all that information has been removed. But by far, for me, the most mind-blowing effect of sound was Luc Montagnier in 2011, that spontaneously created DNA with sound. Now, this is spectacular, people. Think about what you are. What are you? If Luc Montagnier could spontaneously generate DNA in a test tube, he had one test tube, empty, another test tube next to it, in a bowl, in a tank of glass, in a tank of water, and he exposed it to 7 hertz. Interesting number, 7 hertz. And within a few hours, DNA spontaneously appeared in the empty test tube. So what does that tell us? That not only can we manifest things with sound, but we can manifest very complex, encoded molecules like the DNA that are encoded with all the knowledge and complex information for the building of an entire human body, with all the physiological side effects that are encoded in that DNA. We are walking, talking transmitters and receivers, because every cell in our body, especially in your skin, every nucleus has got a DNA molecule in it and chromosomes in it that are receptors, receivers, and transmitters. And that brings me to the magnetron. Magnetron technology. And this is called resonant cavity magnetron.
I hope we get the picture now. Now that we've looked some at the adversary, let's get we looked quite some at the adversary. Let's go back to the voice of Yahuwah in Genesis 1. And Yahuwah said, he spoke. I know some cultures said that he sung. I got it. Let's pull this over here. Alright, Genesis 1. And Yahuwah said, CV, and he spoke. A word, a frequency. A chain of words to form a sentence. Also a sickness as a break in the chain of the body. Just like Mr. Tellinger talked about, there was a break. They had part of this quote-unquote binary code in the atmosphere, but it was broken in pieces. He spoke. A continuation of segments which fill the whole. That's where this comes from. He's each and every one of those notes. He's each and every one of those letters. And then, so you have your point, and then you have a point, and a point. Now you have a line segment. In music you have a harmony. In the linguistics you have harmony. Hey, you have these 2 points. In the whole entire atmosphere you have these 2 points. Now you've got this harmony. Then you add the third, and you've got and I know it makes that stupid triangle. We could stick it up to our eye, right? And be Illuminati-like, okay? But they know that. They know that, okay? Now you've got your chord. Now you've got your smallest shape, which encloses a volume. And it overlaps in time and season and place. And it constantly is moving and turning. I don't know any other way to explain it than that. And when he said these things, they were all in their perfect order. Because the word for word is Debar. And Debar comes for Dalit Resh, which is generation after generation after cycle after cycle after cycle, which has a concrete of order. Everything was in order. How was it in all order? Subdue all things. I don't know why I had that there. Must be something in a verse somewhere. How did he do that? What's the seed beginning? It's what we started out at the very beginning. We had the noon resh, which is where the word for zamar, or singing to Yahuwah, it's the seed beginning. The remnant is to press the beginning, which was the seed from the beginning, because the shin resh is your root line for the remnant. So let's go read. So the voice of Yahuwah put all this in order in the first place. It all was in its perfect order. And we've read the story. We know the front of the book, so we can see the back of the book. It all fell apart in the front. It's all going to come back together in the end. Let's go to Psalm 29. Let's pull it up. Okay, ascribe to Yahuwah. Give. A giving of someone or something to one who is deserving or to be privileged. This is the love line. We love him because he first loved us. Picture of one looking at a great sight with his hands raised when saying, behold. The bait is the house. Combined, these pictures mean look toward the house or provide for the family. One does not choose the household which one is born into, including tribe, parents, children, and wife, as marriage were often arranged by the father. It is a gift from Eloah. These gifts are seen as a privilege and are to be cherished and protected. Okay? Give him as the provider of the house. Look toward him who is the head of the house. Ascribe to him the glory. Do his name. Ascribe to Yahuwah, O you sons of the mighty. Ascribe to Yahuwah esteem. I got stuck on the wrong verse. Ascribe to him esteem, glory, and strength. Well, we saw this. He's my strength and my song. Ascribe to him the fact that he is the all-knowing. The fact that he is the one we should be intimate with. Know our weapon. Ascribe to him that he is the weapon that we should know. Ascribe to Yahuwah the esteem of his name, which is the breath. Yahuwah. Bow yourselves to Yahuwah in the splendor of set apartness. Be set apart from all this that is going on. The voice, what? We looked at the voice already, of Yahuwah is, where was it? And where is it? It's over the what? The waters. And what are we? What are we? Oh my gosh, we're 70% or thereabouts water. The glory of Yahuwah thundereth. The glory is upon many waters. Do we resonate as the voice of many waters with Yahuwah as a natural resonator of all that which is set apart? The voice of Yahuwah is with power. Is that what we're speaking? Is that what we're singing? Is that the tone and the note we're carrying from what resonates inside our DNA in place and in time and in season? The voice of Yahuwah is with greatness. The voice of Yahuwah is breaking the cedars. Yahuwah is breaking the cedars of Lebanon in pieces. Lebanon comes from Leb, which is the heart. And he makes them skip like a calf, Lebanon and Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of Yahuwah cuts through the flames of fire. The voice of Yahuwah shakes the wilderness. You feel shook? Everything's getting shaken up. Yahuwah shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Yahuwah makes the deer give birth, and strips the forest bare. And in his Hakel, everyone says, esteem. Yahuwah sat enthroned at the flood and sits as sovereign king forever. Yahuwah gives strength to his people and blesses his people with peace. He causes his people to know him as their weapon and blesses them with everything from the El to the Taw, the seed beginning. It's for his people with shalom. Adding everything that needs to be added and taking everything in this world away that needs to be taken away. That's what we are blessed with. The voice of Yahuwah that we get to resonate with. It's in his language. It's contextual. It works like linguistics. It works like DNA. It works like the atmosphere. Okay, one more time, Mr. Tellinger. $40 to 42:40.
Good evening. Thank you for coming to the fifth 6 days of creation, how all that fits dolphin words and expressions. And the amazing thing is that when they communicate with each other, when they throw, for example, they throw the thing on his wrist, and the control to frequency carries to TV, radio, cell phones, Wi-Fi. All of this is a control system of humanity. Nothing has changed over thousands of years. Come on. So let's go back and ask ourselves, so what is the sound? What is this resonance thing? It's spectacular, because at school you get taught that sound is this way. Well, it's a sound. There's a sound wave, see? Sound wave on a board, and this is amplitude, this is the wavelength, and this is what you go away thinking this is what sound is. Well, that will screw you up for the rest of your life, because you'll constantly see sound as a line on a board. Sound is a living thing. It's a three-dimensional thing. Sound leaves your mouth and leaves the source, and it goes in all directions. It's not a linear thing. It doesn't go in one direction. It goes in all directions. And just because you can't hear it doesn't mean it's not there. So what we can look at sound as being is the breath of the Creator, because it tells us God said, "Let there be light." All ancient cultures tell us that everything in existence came out of the primordial sound of the Creator. And I refer to it as the prime resonance frequency, where everything in creation resonates in harmony. Nothing is in dissonance. Everything has to exist in harmonic coherence, not dissonance. Otherwise it could not coexist. And in there lie some very important answers to how we should live together as a community.
That is correct. He is correct.
And I believe this is what Gene Roddenberry was trying to tell us in Star Trek for nearly 60 years now about the Prime Directive. That you cannot breach the Prime Directive. If the Prime Directive is the prime resonance of everything in creation, it gives you a very clear indication. What is the consequence of breaching the prime directive? Is you begin your own demise. You become the cancer cell in the great creation.
Does that sound like the enemy? Does that sound like what's going on? Does that sound like, someone wants to be Yahuwah and sit on the throne?
You become the disease. You are in dis-ease with everything else that is in harmony around you. And this is the message that we've been told in countless TV shows and blockbuster movies from Hollywood.
Okay. Do we get the picture? Do we get the picture? I'm going to watch just a few little clips here and there of Professor Dimitri from the Quadruple Hierarchy. Actually, y'all need to go watch this from Professor Dimitri from the Quadruple Hierarchy. I think we've been through this enough already that when you watch this, you can use this slide, go watch these. I would encourage you to watch the whole thing. These are the points that I was going to use, that I was going to make. This just shows how it all works, again, on a musical level. He has put it together at the chord level. I would like, and I don't disagree, it said there's a chord level, but I think it all starts with a note. It all starts with one note, one letter. So, you can go watch that. We're going to go to Psalm 47. Turn this air back on. We'll pull up Psalm 47. Oh, clap your hands, all you people. Shout to Eloah with a voice of singing. Okay, this is a voice of triumph. Okay, it's not singing, though, with a voice of triumph. For Yahuwah, Most High, is awesome, to be feared. The great sovereign, it says his walk was great, the king's walk was great, over all the earth. He subdues, Debar, that's where subdues everything comes from. When I had in that slide in Genesis, he subdues Debar. He gives a word over all the people. He puts everything in order under us, and nations under our feet. He chooses our inheritance for us, the excellence of Jacob, whom he loves, Selah. We love him because he first loved us. Eloah shall go up with a shout, a teruah. Yahuwah with the voice of a shofar, which goes up in English to a spiral that spins. We're going to look at that in another video. But we've seen how everything goes in a cycle, and it spins, especially with Professor Dimitri, and it jumps off. Did we watch it? No, you got to go back and watch that video. It jumps off into the next ring, and into the next ring, and into the next ring. Sing. Sing to Eloah. There's your note. Sing. Eloah is that note. Sing. And that note produces a harmony. Sing, and that note produces a chord, or the smallest space that encloses a volume. Because that's what is the grid system in the Shemaim and here in this atmosphere and on the earth, as we saw in all those 3 pictures I had laid out. Sing, because he's king over time and place and season, like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber is noted as the sun in Psalm 19. I'm not saying to worship the sun. For Eloah is king of all the earth. Sing, and what holds it all together? He does. He does. I don't know, people, scientists, I don't know, New Age people want to call it the ether. Okay, scientifically, if you want to call it that, fine. I don't care. He holds it all together. It's like the 5th dimension, quote unquote. That's where they get these terms. He wants to be Yahuwah so bad. And he wants us to be Yahuwah so bad with him. All these things are based on scriptural context, scriptural ideas. Because it was what was from the beginning. Sing praises to Eloah. There's your power. He's each and every one of those letters. Sing praises. Be in harmony. Sing praises like a chord, like a triplet, like a triple codone, codone. Sing in time and place and season. Resonate with him, because he's the one that holds it all together. With understanding, the ability to consider a situation with comprehension in order to be successful or prosperous. So when you hear the voice that looms on the horizon, the sound, the picture, when the counterfeit looms on the horizon, you need to have the ability to resonate with the voice of Yahuwah, that you can be successful and prosperous for the kingdom. Yahuwah reigneth over the heathen. Yahuwah sitteth upon the throne of holiness. The prince of the peoples are gathered together. By what? By his language, by his pure language. The people of Eloah, of Abraham. For the shields of the earth belong to Eloah, and he is greatly exalted. Like the protection of the garden. Sing unto Eloah. Sing. Now go back and watch what I have laid. Go back and watch what I have laid out there on this screen. Actually, go watch the whole thing, because these little pieces, you probably could. You go back and watch these little pieces, but again, I would encourage you to watch the whole thing and sing. Get intimate with your weapon, the seed beginning everything from the L to the Taw. Get intimate with how they harmonize. Get intimate with how they work together on a DNA resonating within your body in time and in place and in season. Get so familiar with each and every piece of who he is that you recognize that counterfeit immediately, because for some it's too late. Psalm 118. And I don't think we're going to read the whole thing. Oh yeah, we're not going to read that whole thing. We'll start at verse 1 and see where we get to. Oh, give thanks to Yahuwah, for he is good. For he is Tob. For his loving commitment is everlasting. Let Yisrael now say, his loving commitment is everlasting. Let the house of Aaron now say, his loving commitment is everlasting. Let his priesthood Now say, the priesthood of the order of the King of Righteousness, because Aaron's priesthood is gone. Now say, his loving commitment is everlasting. Let those who fear Yahuwah now say, his loving commitment is everlasting. I call on Yah in distress. Yah answered me in a broad place. Call on him, for his loving commitment is everlasting. Yahuwah is on my side, and that's really all we have to hold on to. I do not fear what man does to me, because Yahuwah lives. Yahuwah is for me among those helping me. Therefore, I look on those hating me. It is better to take refuge in Yahuwah than to trust in man. Pay attention. Know the voice of Yahuwah. It is all the nations surrounded me. In the name of Yahuwah, I shall cut them off. Just say no. Just say no. You have to. They surrounded me. Yes, they surrounded me. In the name of Yahuwah, I cut them off. They surrounded me like bees, like with a hive mind. They were extinguished like burning thorns. In the name of Yahuwah, I shall cut them off. Pushing, the enemy pushed me to fall, but Yahuwah helped me. Yah is my strength. He is the weapon that I am intimate with. He is my intimate weapon, and he is my song. He is the note, the harmony, the chord, the time, the place, the season, and he is what holds it all together in its perfect order. Not the broken system we are in now. He is our strength, and he is our song, each and every letter. He has become my deliverance, my Shah, my Yahusha. Praise Yahuwah. We just thank you, Father. Yahuwah, we thank you, Father. And we can understand. That which was invisible created all things that are visible. That which is invisible is what the adversary wants to be. And he wants to be the creator. And he wants to use everything of yours to be who you are. But he can never be. He can never be the authority inside of your remnant. Those who are pressing the beginning, the L to the Taw, and the conglomeration of what you breathe to fill the whole in its perfect order. Father, help us, Yahuwah. Show us the way there is no way, and no matter what befalls us, Yahuwah, let us all be strong and know that you are our weapon, whether in life or whether in death. You are eternal life, and your loving commitment is everlasting. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.